Hello everyone, welcome to Study Vibes with Ash. So this is the video on MED2 Sustainable Development Issues and Challenges. I hope इससे पहले की जितने भी videos हैं you've gone through them and it has helped you. So जिन्होंने भी अभी तक channel को subscribe नहीं किया है please do subscribe and put in your likes, comments and shares. और मुझे बताना कि आगे आपको कौन कौन सी papers चाहिए जितना हो सके I'll try to do it. Okay, so let's quickly move on. So define sustainable development, discuss its objectives with relevant examples. So what is sustainable development? It is meeting today's needs without harming future generations. So it's a balance between environmental, economic and social priorities. Now, this definition, the development that meets present needs without compromising future needs, was set by the Brundtland Commission in 1987. And sustainable development links growth with environmental and social responsibility. Then, what are the objectives of sustainable development? Firstly, environmental protection, to reduce pollution, conserve resources, to protect biodiversity, जैसे कि solar and wind energy. Then, social equity and inclusivity, to improve the living standards for all through education, healthcare and equality, जो कि SDG 10 जिसका फोकस है reduced inequality उसमें भी कहा गया है. SDGs are what? Sustainable Development Goals. Right, so social equity and inclusivity, then economic growth, because it links growth with what? Environment protection. So for long-term growth through green technologies and circular economy models which will reduce waste. So for example, Denmark and Germany have been expanding their renewable energy and they are developed nations at this point, right? Also sustainable farming practices like organic agriculture. That's another way in which that's a green way of farming. So for conclusion, sustainable development ensures environmental protection, social fairness and economic stability for long-term well-being. Then again, what are the objectives of sustainable development? Its goals aim to support present and future generations by balancing environmental, economic and social needs. So what are the objectives? Environmental sustainability, to protect ecosystems, reduce emissions and conserve resources like afforestation, to restore forests. Economic growth with equity, like to promote inclusive and green economic systems that create jobs and reduce inequality. Social well-being and justice, to ensure access to healthcare, education, housing and equal opportunities for all, especially the marginalized. Cultural preservation and human development, to protect cultural heritage while promoting education, creativity and community empowerment. जैसे कि Swachh Bharat mission was to improve what? Sanitation. The Paris Agreement, which addresses climate change globally. So through Swachh Bharat mission हम अपने culture को भी protect कर रहे हैं while also human development. So for conclusion we can say environmental, economic and social objectives must work together for lasting equitable development. So जैसे कि आपने देखा most of the questions might be similar in nature, तो काफ़ी answers will be repeating, but I'm giving it ताकि you will have more options to depend on and more points as well. ठीक है? And anything that is अगर किसी और सवाल से related हो किसी भी तरीके से, then you can write that also in your given answer. What are the dimensions of sustainable development? Again, it has multiple dimensions that must be balanced simultaneously for long-term process. So what are the dimensions? Environmental dimension, it is to conserve natural resources, to reduce pollution through practices like renewable energy and waste reduction. Then the economic dimension, which focuses on long-term growth while reducing resource overuse like green jobs and circular economy. Then social dimension promotes equality, social justice and access to essential services. Then political dimension, it focuses on good governance, transparency and strong institutions to support sustainable policies. So SDGs address all dimensions, that is the sustainable development goals. Green urban planning in cities like Copenhagen is another way which links development with growth. So environmental, economic, social and political dimensions work together to achieve sustainable development. Next one, explain the term sustainability and describe the origin of the concept of sustainable development. So sustainability ensures that current needs are met without harming future generations. It emphasizes balance across environmental, social and economic areas. Sustainability involves responsible use of resources, maintaining ecological balance and supporting long-term social and economic well-being. Now, what is the origin of sustainable development? This idea gained attention with the Brundtland Report in 1987, which highlighted the need for long-term ecological and social balance. Earlier origin would include, conservation movements and works like Silent Spring in 1962. But globally, Brundtland Report was the first report that sort of brought about an idea on sustainable development. I hope you know what Brundtland Report is. It was produced by UN in 1987. This way, they had done studies on environment and came up with this idea of, having a growth pattern which is long-term in approach, and for the benefit of our societies as a whole, because that was the time when the world sort of was taking heed of environmental degradation. Silent Spring was a work, actually it was a book by Rachel Carson, लेकिन उसमें भी ऐसे कई सारी चीज़ें थी, but again it was not commissioned by government and all. So for example, Brundtland Commission shaped the further global sustainability policies. Then the major summit, Earth Summit in 1992, was done to promote international action on the environment. This was the UN Conference on Environment and Development. It is also known as the Rio de Janeiro Conference, and it was a major conference for what? The Agenda 21, all of this UNCED, which focused on what? Climate and biodiversity conventions. So all of those things. Or usi tarah we have SDG goals, which was created in 2015 by UN under 2030 agenda. Or bhi Earth summits hue hain. So all of those things. So sustainability arose from growing concerns about resource depletion and environmental harm, shaping global development strategies. Now differentiate between sustainable and non-sustainable activities. Provide suggestions to reduce non-sustainable activities. So sustainable activities will support long-term environmental and social health, while non-sustainable ones will damage the ecosystem and resources. So what are sustainable activities like renewable energy use, organic farming, recycling and composting? Non-sustainable activities are deforestation, overfishing, heavy reliance on fossil fuels. Now, how do we reduce these non-sustainable activities? First, shift to renewable energy, then promote sustainable farming, then improve waste management, encourage public transport and electronic vehicles, implement strong environmental laws, all of these things. So for conclusion, we can say when we reduce non-sustainable activities and adopt greener practices, then societies can protect the environment and ensure long-term development. Carrying capacity and ecological footprint. So what is carrying capacity? Carrying capacity is the maximum number of organisms an environment can support without being damaged. It is its maximum potential. So it is the largest population a habitat can sustain long-term based on available food, water, space and environmental conditions. Now, this carrying capacity will change based on resource levels, technology and consumption patterns. So, it is not merely related to number, it is also based on, let's say, the resource levels or technology that is available and the way in which people consume. So, even if the number of people in a habitat is small, but if their consumption rates are high, then it is beyond the carrying capacity. So, what are the factors that influence carrying capacity? Resource availability. More resources will increase capacity and vice versa. Environmental conditions. Good climate and habitats will support larger population, which is why we have big cities having all of these facilities. Then human influence. Activities like deforestation, pollution and urbanization will lower the environmental capacity, which is why if you see right now in major cities, earlier there was a migration from villages to cities. Right now what has happened? People are coming back to villages. Why? Because of the environmental conditions. Even though more resources might be there, people are opting to stay in that clean environment. So examples, humans, global carrying capacity will vary based on lifestyle and resource use, which is why even in a village, if it's sparsely populated, it will still have good environmental conditions. Wildlife, a forest deer population will depend on what? Food, water and predation levels. So for conclusion, carrying capacity helps measure limits on population and resource use, and that is again another aspect of what? Sustainable environmental management. What is the ecological footprint and how does it relate to carrying capacity? So ecological footprint measures how much land and resources people use to support their lifestyle. So definition of ecological footprint is it expresses the land that is needed for food, energy, materials and water absorption for either a person or population. Now what is the difference between ecological footprint and carrying capacity? Comparing ecological footprint with Earth's capacity will show whether resource use is sustainable or exceeding limits. Ecological footprint will reveal, the area that is needed. Carrying capacity is how much of area can support how much people. Then resource depletion and overshoot. When footprint exceeds the biocapacity, it will lead to overshoot, that is overuse of resources, biodiversity loss and population. Then examples like global overshoot. Humanity has currently consumed more than the earth can regenerate annually. Then developed versus developing nations. Wealthy countries have larger footprints because they are consuming more. The more you consume or the more you intake, the more will be your footprints. So ecological footprint will show how closely human demand aligns with Earth's carrying capacity and highlights sustainability challenges. Next is again, what is the concept of ecological footprint and how it helps in understanding sustainability? जैसे कि मैंने कहा, some of the questions might be repeating. Don't bother. आपको मैंने अलग अलग points देने की कोशिश की है ताकि आप जब एग्जाम पे जाओगे so you will have a more better understanding. The ecological footprint quantifies the environmental impact of human consumption and waste. Ecological footprint and sustainability. It assesses the resource consumption. It shows how much productive land is needed for food, energy, materials, and helping to measure environmental pressure. Now, how it tracks global sustainability. By comparing footprint with biocapacity, we can see whether societies live within Earth's limits or exceed them. So, for example, carbon footprint. A major part of the ecological footprint will reflect CO2 emissions from energy use, highlighting the need for renewable energy. An ecological footprint is a key tool for evaluating sustainability and guiding efforts to reduce resource use and environmental impact. Then explain the importance of carrying capacity in the context of sustainable development. Carrying capacity defines the limits of resource use and population growth that ecosystems can handle without harm. So, importance of carrying capacity in sustainable development. Resource management and planning. It helps prevent depletion of natural resources by setting limits on use and supporting long-term planning. Then guiding population growth. Understanding carrying capacity will ensure that population and consumption remain within ecological limits. Then supporting biodiversity and ecosystem health. Carrying capacity will protect this wildlife and ecosystems by preventing overuse. Like by analyzing this carrying capacity, we can understand, that it does not lead to species loss or habitat destruction. So, for example, like agriculture, if we practice like crop rotation, then we can prevent soil overuse. Then fisheries, catching limits will help maintain fish population. So, respecting carrying capacity is essential for sustainable development and ensuring resources last for future generations while maintaining the ecological balance. So what is the importance of carrying capacity in sustainable development? It is needed for resource management and planning, to guide the population growth, and to support biodiversity and ecosystem health. We can bring in patterns for it. Now, industrialization and its impact. Discuss the impact of industrialization on sustainable development. Industrialization boosts economic growth but creates environmental and social challenges that affect sustainable development. Then what are the positive impacts? Firstly, economic growth and job creation. Industries create employment, raise income levels and support national economic development. Technological advancements. Industrialization leads to innovations such as renewable energy systems, clean technologies and efficient production methods which support sustainability. What are the negative impacts of industrialization? Environmental degradation. Like industrial activities also cause pollution, deforestation and biodiversity loss due to emissions, waste and excessive land use. Then resource depletion. High consumption of fossil fuels, minerals and water will strain the ecosystems and threaten future resource availability. So industrialization supports growth but harms the environment, and shifting to cleaner technologies and responsible production is essential for sustainable development. Explain the different forms of industrialization and their advantages. So, industrialization occurs in multiple forms, each shaping economic growth differently. Understanding these forms will help in choosing sustainable development pathways. Forms of industrialization. There is the traditional industrialization, which is heavy industry focused, like the traditional steel, coal, machinery, and large scale manufacturing. There the advantages are it will drive strong economic growth. Then major infrastructure developments like transport and energy systems are involved in it. Light industrialization is consumer goods and electronics, which focus on consumer goods like textile, electronics and automobiles. Here there will be creation of diverse jobs, especially in urban areas, promotes technological advancement and economic diversification. Then green or sustainable industrialization. This emphasizes what renewable energy, low waste and eco-friendly products. Its advantages, it reduces pollution and resource use. Then it encourages clean innovation and long-term environmental stability. So while traditional and light industries spur economic growth, green industrialization is vital for sustainable and environmentally responsible development. So there are the traditional heavy industry based, then the light industrialization which is consumer goods, and right now we have the green or sustainable industrialization. What are the challenges of industrialization for the environment? Industrialization fuels growth but creates environmental problems that threaten sustainability. So what are the challenges? First, pollution. Industries emit harmful gases and dump waste into air, water and soil, and this causes health and environmental damage. Then resource depletion. Mining, logging and heavy energy use reduce vital natural resources and disrupt the ecosystem. Waste generation. Industries produce hazardous waste, plastics and e-waste which remain in the environment for centuries and then harm ecosystems. Climate change. Industrial greenhouse gas emissions has significantly contributed to global warming and extreme weather patterns. So for conclusion, we can say that industrialization puts serious pressure on the environment. Cleaner energy use, waste reduction and eco-friendly manufacturing are necessary to reduce these impacts. Now discuss the role of industrialization in promoting sustainable development. तो अभी हमने पहले क्या देखा? What are the impacts? Negatives, that is pollution, resource depletion, waste generation and climate change. Now how can it aid in sustainable development? Industrialization can support sustainable development when guided by clean technologies and efficient resource use. Role of industrialization: economic development with low environmental impact. Using renewable energy and cleaner production methods will allow industries to grow without harming the environment. Now, innovation in clean technologies. Industrial progress drives development of solar power, electric vehicles, efficient appliances as well as other green technologies, जो कि innovation ही है in technology. Then, job creation, sustainable sectors. Green industries will create employment in renewable energy, recycling, sustainable agriculture and environmental services. Environmental services are any job that is related to environment, like let's say cleaning duties or environmental advice, pollution control jobs, all of that. Then resource efficiency and circular economy. Industries adopting recycling, reusing and repairing materials, that is reduce, reuse, recycle, the 3 R's, that will lead to reduction of waste and conserving resources. The best example for these resource efficiencies are Denmark, wherein it is heavily funded in wind energy and green technologies. Then Germany, which promotes renewable energy and efficient industrial processes. This energy Wende is actually German for energy turnaround, something similar to energy transition, which is actually part of their national strategy. So the focus is to shift the energy system from fossil fuels to nuclear power and then towards a low carbon and environmentally friendly, reliable and affordable renewable energy source at the moment. So for conclusion, we can say that industrialization can support sustainable development by embracing cleaner technologies and efficient resource use. Green industrialization offers a path to economic prosperity without environmental damage. Now, globalization. Explain globalization and its impact on sustainable development. Globalization is a growing interconnectedness of countries through trade, technology, culture, and communication. It shapes economies, societies, and the environment, influencing sustainable development. in both positive and negative ways. Now, what are the impact of globalization on sustainable development? It will lead to economic growth and global trade. Globalization boosts economic growth and market access, helping reduce poverty. However, benefits are unevenly shared and that leads to income gaps. Environmental degradation. Higher production, transport and resource extraction will increase pollution, deforestation and emissions. Some countries have weakened the regulations for more investors, and that has led to further environmental harm. Cultural homogenization. Global consumer culture will spread widely and that will threaten local traditions and encourage unsustainable consumption patterns which may not be in sync with the local patterns. Increase awareness and action. Global communication spreads knowledge about sustainability. International cooperation such as the Paris Agreement shows how globalization can support environmental protection. So for conclusion, we can say that globalization drives economic and technological progress but also adds environmental and social challenges. Sustainable policies and global cooperation are needed to balance its impacts. Then, what are the components of globalization and how has it influenced foreign direct investment? That is FDI. So, globalization has economic, cultural, political and technological dimensions. A major aspect is foreign direct investment, where foreign companies invest in domestic industries. Components of globalization include economic integration, like countries reduce the trade barriers and open up their markets for global trade and capital flows. Technological advancements will improve communication and transport, will allow firms to operate globally with ease. Then cultural exchange, like ideas, values and cultural products will spread worldwide, though sometimes at the cost of local identities. Then labor mobility, people will move across borders for work and education. That will again increase skill exchange. Then FDI and its influence. We can talk about attracting capital because more countries will be more welcome to have FDIs because that will bring in capital, jobs and industrial growth. Technology and knowledge transfer, because when a foreign direct investment happens, it will also bring in its modern technology, management practices, and therein it will improve productivity. Then economic growth. FDI will support industrial expansion and infrastructure, but it can also cause resource exploitation if the regulations are weak. So FDI is a major driver of global economic integration. So it helps in growth. Countries must manage it carefully to avoid environmental and social harm. What are the pros and cons of globalization in the context of sustainable development? Globalization reshapes economies and societies. It brings growth and technological progress, but also raises sustainability concerns. Now, what are the advantages of globalization for sustainable development? First, economic growth and poverty reduction, which is why even India opened up its markets in 1991. Trade and investments will create jobs, infrastructure will be improved, and also reduce poverty for developing countries. Access to clean technologies. Globalization will spread green technologies like renewable energy and efficient waste systems. Global environmental cooperation. Why are we saying that you need globalization or growth for cleaner technologies? Because all of these green technologies are very economically superior. So a third world country with no money can never afford it, which is why developed nations are transitioning faster. Global environmental cooperation. Countries can work together on issues such as climate change and pollution, leading to global agreements like UNDP or UNFCCC, all of those organizations. Now, what are the negatives of globalization for sustainable development? Firstly, environmental degradation. High resource use, emissions and industrial waste can harm ecosystems and accelerate the climate change. Inequality and social displacement. Benefits will favor the wealthy groups or nations more, and some countries might face labor exploitation and resource overuse, because at the end of the day, let's say they're taking raw materials from somewhere and constructing somewhere. So in that case, certain nations might be more negatively harmed than the rest. Cultural erosion, because local cultures may be overshadowed by global consumer culture and that can affect the traditional sustainable practices. So globalization brings opportunities but also major sustainability challenges, and effective policies must support fair growth, environmental protection and cultural preservation. Now, how does globalization affect resource consumption and waste generation? Globalization will increase global production, trade and consumption. So while it boosts economic growth, It also drives higher resource use and waste generation, creating major sustainability challenges. Impact of globalization on resource consumption. Increased demand for natural resources. As the markets grow, there will be more need for minerals, fossil fuels, and water. Then industries, just like electronics, will require, high resource extraction, and that can harm ecosystems. Then higher consumption of energy and water. Rising industrial activity will increase energy use, mostly from fossil fuels, and that can lead to higher emissions. Water intensive industries can add pressure to already stressed resources. Impact of globalization on waste generation. Increased waste production. Like more production and consumption can mean more packaging waste, plastic waste, and e-waste, especially in high consumption regions. Waste export and inequality. Developed countries, they will be developing, but they will export their waste to developing nations, and that will create pollution and health risks in poorer regions. Resource wastage in supply chains. Global supply chains can cause overproduction, product obsolescence, and transport related wastage. So, for examples like plastic waste, global plastic production has outpaced even all kinds of waste management, which is why we are seeing ocean and landfill pollution at the moment. E-waste, countries like India and China, they receive large volumes of imported e-waste. So that is creating another environmental hazard. So globalization will accelerate resource use and waste generation, and sustainable production, recycling, and circular economy approaches are needed to reduce its environmental impact. Then climate change and environmental protection. Discuss climate change and its impact on sustainable development. Climate change driven by fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial activities alters temperatures, weather patterns, and ecosystems. It poses a major threat to sustainable development globally. Now, what is the impact of climate change on sustainable development? Environmental impacts. Rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and melting ice can disrupt ecosystems, reduce crop yields, and threaten biodiversity. Economic consequences. Climate disasters can damage infrastructure, disrupt markets, and burden economies, especially in developing countries. Coastal regions face high risk from sea level rise. Social and health impacts. Vulnerable groups are most affected. Climate change can worsen poverty, displacement, and disease spread. Impact on SDGs. Climate change slows progress on goals related to poverty, water, energy, and ecosystems. So, for example, we can see droughts in East Africa, and that has affected the food security. Cyclones in Bangladesh and Philippines, which cause displacement and economic loss. So, climate change threatens environmental, social, and economic stability. Global mitigation adaptation efforts are the essential ones. Then, short note on climate change and its impact on sustainable development. Climate change results from human activities like fossil fuel use and deforestation. It poses serious risk to sustainability. Impact of climate change on sustainable development. Environmental degradation. Changing temperatures and rainfall affect water, soils, forests, and agriculture. Economic losses. Disasters and reduced productivity cause major financial strain, especially in developing countries. Health and social issues. Heat waves, pollution, and vector-borne diseases increase. Poor communities will face greater risk. Conclusion. Climate change undermines sustainability. Mitigation and adaptation are vital for protecting people and ecosystems. What are the global efforts to address climate change and their challenges? Climate change requires global cooperation. Many international agreements exist, but progress is uneven due to economic and political differences. Global efforts to address climate change. First, we have the Paris Agreement in 2015, which targeted limiting warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. Countries were asked to commit to emission reduction plans and support for developing nations. NDCs are what nationally determined contributions, wherein, as part of Paris Agreement, each country should have their own plan to cut greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to climate change impacts. And this must be updated every 5 years so that we can limit the global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius, basically to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Then Kyoto Protocol in 1997, it set binding emission reduction targets for developed countries, and then further protocols came in. For CFCs and all of that, HFCs. Then UNFCCC See, it provides the main platform for global climate negotiations and information sharing in climate action. Okay, what are the challenges? Different national priorities. So, developing nations expect high responsibility from historically high emitting countries, but they'll not be willing to do that. They are like, why should we do that? Political and economic constraints. Fossil fuel dependence and political resistance can still affect climate change because it's not easy to switch from fossil fuels. Then financing and technology transfer. Developing countries will need more financial support and more cleaner energies to make this transition. So that can only be supported by whom? The developed nations. For conclusion, global climate initiatives are essential but face challenges. So we need stronger cooperation, funding and political commitments are needed. Then what are the measures to reduce the pace of climate change and mitigate its effects? Reducing climate change requires lowering emissions, shifting to clean energy, and strengthening resilience. What are the key measures? Transition to renewable energy. Solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal can reduce dependence on fossil fuels. Energy efficiency. Efficient buildings, transport, and industry can lower energy use and emissions. Carbon pricing. Carbon taxes and cap and trade can push industries to cut emissions. That is, how much ever carbon you reduce, you'll be having an incentive for it. Afforestation and reforestation, because trees can absorb more carbon dioxide and hence can support biodiversity. Then, sustainable agriculture. Practices like agroforestry and organic farming can reduce agricultural emissions and improve resilience. Agroforestry is combining forests with agriculture so that both of them can go side by side. So example is Germany's energy when they promoting renewable energy as a national strategy. Canada's carbon pricing. Carbon pricing is what you'll be taxed if you make damage beyond a certain limit or produce more carbon for cleaner production. So mitigation requires renewable energy efficiency, ecosystem protection and sustainable practices. So strong policies and global cooperation are essential. So with this I'm winding part 1 of MED2. I hope this has helped you. Part 2 will be uploaded quite soon. Thanks for watching. Do subscribe, like, share and comment. Let me know what you feel. और जल्दी part 2 भी आएगा and thanks for supporting everyone. Thank you. Bye.